Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdoulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. As we've seen last week, the Prophet peace upon him and the Muslims, they won a great battle. They had an amazing victory against the Quraish. The victory itself was an amazing victory, as we learned last week, and the events that happened and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped the Muslims, even though they were 300 versus 1,000, triple their number and way more equipped. They still defeated the Quraysh and were recognized from the Quraysh and all of Arabia as a legitimate, powerful force that also can fight and win in battles. The Quraysh, they would of course receive a heavy blow with this loss. It was a humiliation. They lost, the biggest of chiefs. They lost the biggest of names in this war. And of course they lost, respect and the things that they valued so much, how people, viewed them and talked about them and so on and so forth. In addition, someone who we don't always think about, but they were affected and hurt through the victory of the Muslims, is the Jews of Medina. Is that they didn't want the Prophet upon him or the Muslims to gain in their respect or their status or their power. And when the Prophet upon him won in Badr, they were hurt. They seen the Muslims are taking over and they are dominating Medina, Mecca, and all of Arabia, and they did not want this. Of course, they wanted to be, from day one, they wanted to be the strongest and the biggest in Medina, the Jews of Medina. The Quraysh and the Jews of Medina, they are now going to plot and do things against the Prophet in order to limit them. And we're going to see this and the events that it leads up to before what would lead up to the major battle of Uhud. As you guys can see from the title, major events between Badr and Uhud is because after Badr, there is a whole year before the battle of Uhud. So you're talking about a lot of major events happen that we have to discuss and we have to talk about because they are of the biggest events in the Seerah and things that are talked about a lot, so that we can understand and know the authentic, true thing that really happened through this time. The first thing that we're going to discuss that would happen in between Badr and Uhud is the attempt to kill the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Safwan bin Umayyah and Umayr bin Wahab, they sat down and they began discussing the defeat at Badr, who they lost, what happened, the humiliation that happened. And as they're sitting and talking, they both expressed their desire to get revenge, to get payback. So then Umair, he says that he has a strong desire to kill the Prophet, peace be upon him. However, he can't fulfill this desire because he is under a lot of debt and he has to support his family. Because if he was going to act on this desire to go kill the Prophet upon him, he has to leave Mecca and go to Medina. This journey by itself is a long journey, and the time that he has to plan this out and actually execute it and then come back from Medina, this is going to take a long time. So during this time, who's going to provide for his family? Who is going to pay off his debt? So he's saying this is why I can't do it. That's when Safwan, he also had the desire to kill the Prophet upon him because they wanted to stop the Muslims from the core. And Safwan bin Umayyah, why is he has this strong desire? Because his father, Umayyah bin Khalaf, was killed in the battle of Badr. So he also wants this to happen. So Safwan, he says that Umayr, I will take care of your debt and I will take care of your family if you go and kill the Prophet upon him. This was the agreement. So Umayr, he accepted and he went to go kill the Prophet upon him. The only thing that was with him is a sword that he took and he dipped it in poison. So he's going to Medina. And of course this journey is a long journey. It's not something short. Anyways, as he arrives in Medina, he goes straight for the Prophet's masjid. And as he's approaching the masjid, Umar ibn Khattab, he sees him from a distance and recognizes him and even knows that he's coming with evil intentions. So Umar ibn Khattab, he goes and informs the Prophet upon him. And the Prophet upon him, of course, not being scared or threatened or anything, he doesn't really care that he's coming. He says, let him in, adi. Let him come in, let's see what he has to do. So Umar, he comes in. And Umar ibn Khattab, as he's walking in, he is waiting for Umayr even to blink, to even act a little bit so he can go and defend the Prophet upon him. As Umayr is going in and he enters and he says the greeting of the Quraysh, Ya Sabaha, good morning. That's when the Prophet responds and says, Allah has been generous and he taught us the greeting of the people of Jannah. Assalamu alaikum. This is what the Prophet says. And then the Prophet he questions him and says, what has brought you here? Why are you here? What is your goal? What is your purpose of coming here? From Mecca to Medina. Let's see what you have. So Umayr, he says, I have come to see if my son is well. Umayr's son, he was one of those who were imprisoned by the Muslims in the battle of Badr. So he's saying that he has come to see if his son is doing well, even though we know that it's not. Now, the Prophet says, what about your sword? Why do you have a sword with you? And then that's when Umair, he says, this sword hasn't done nothing for me, and he starts begin cursing it, and this sword hasn't done, didn't do anything for me on the day of Badr, it didn't benefit me at all, and so on and so forth. That's when the Prophet responded, again, is pushing him to say the truth. Why have you come here? Give me an explanation why you are here. And Umair, he begins to deny and change the subject and so on and so forth. That's when the Prophet, peace be upon him, informs Umair the reason why he is here. Subhanallah. Go back to the meeting between Safwan and Umair. The only two people who knew about this meeting and this discussion and this conversation was Safwan and Umair. However, now the Prophet, peace be upon him, is going to inform Umair of the story, of the purpose, of the reason why he is here. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, the only way he could have known this is a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what happened, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in whatever way he willed, he revealed the story to the Prophet, peace upon him, and the Prophet, peace upon him, is now telling Umair the exact story, the exact conversation, the private conversation that Umair had, from beginning to end in great detail. How Safwan and Umair, they were sitting and they were talking about the losses at Badr, and then Umair, he expressed his desire to kill the Prophet, peace upon him, but he had debt and he had to support his family. That's when Safwan, he offered him the deal that I would take care of your debt and your family if you go and do this. And then Umair, he agrees and he gets out. The Prophet, peace upon him, from beginning to end is explaining the story to Umair. And Umair himself, he knows that the only people who knew about this is him and Safwan. So he immediately knows that the only way Prophet Muhammad ﷺ can know of this is through revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that he is a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Umair, he now testifies that Muhammad ﷺ is indeed a prophet of Allah, and he accepts Islam. Through this story, through the Prophet knowing the exact reason, this exact private discussion, Umair testifies that the Prophet is a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He takes his shahada and becomes a Muslim. SubhanAllah, Umair, even if we were to look at his story, he joins the many that would go to try to kill the Prophet and on that same journey accept Islam. One of which is, of course, Umar ibn Khattab in his famous acceptance story. The Prophet would tell the Sahaba to teach Umair the religion, where he would learn the religion, and the Prophet would tell the Sahaba to release his imprisoned son from jail as well, from captivity. And this is what they would do as well. Umair, he would then learn Islam and then soon return to Mecca, where he would give da'wah, and his da'wah would lead many people from the people of Mecca to accept Islam. Now Safwan, what happened to him? Safwan, he was waiting. He was anxious for the news to come that Umair has killed the Prophet upon him. However, the news came that Umair accepted Islam. And then he went crazy. And he said that I am never going to talk to Umair again, even though they were close friends and even relatives. He said, I'm never going to talk to him again. And Safwan, he continues for years to plot and fight against the Muslims and the Prophet peace upon him, until many years, like 5, 6, 7 years from the date we're talking about now, in terms of the after Badr, then he would accept Islam. 6, 7 years down the line, he would accept Islam, but before that, he would plot against the Muslims and so on and so forth. So Safwan, he would also become Muslim as well, which shows us the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People who go and try to kill and destroy Islam eventually end up accepting Islam. Now, another major event that would happen between Badr and Uhud is the expulsion of Banu Qaynuqa. Now, Banu Qaynuqa is the largest of the 3 Jewish tribes. Remember, we said we have Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Nadir, and Bani Quraidah. And then the Prophet at this moment, he would expel only one of these 3 tribes, which is the largest of them, which is Banu Qaynuqa. Now, why did the Prophet expel them? How did he expel them? What was the reasons for doing so? We're going to discuss right now. However, we have to go back to a couple episodes ago when we were talking about those 2-3 episodes where we talked about the Prophet upon reaching Medina, what he did and how he made his impact legitimate. Of the things that we said is that the Prophet made a treaty with the Jews. Remember? Is that they have to do this and we have to do that, and they agreed on a treaty. However, as we're going to see today and in other examples, the Jews didn't want to follow this treaty. So the Prophet he is forced to act. He is forced to respond. You have a treaty and people choose to break it, you have to act in a certain way. This is not rocket science, okay? Because this expulsion of Banu Qaynuqa and other expulsions that would happen at a later time is one of the most controversial topics in the Seerah. However, if we were to sit down and just look at the books, look at the resources, the sources in front of us, it's common sense. It's not rocket science. It's not something that is complicated and should even be controversial. Anyways, we mentioned some of the things that the Jews did, which led to their expulsion. Also, a key point is that the Prophet didn't kick them out because they were Jew or because they were non-Muslims. He kicked them out solely because of the things that they did. We have many examples of the Prophet expelling people who were not Jewish because of the evil that they did. And we have many examples of the Prophet loving and caring for Jews, such as Abdullah ibn Salam, who accepted Islam, who was Jewish. So the Prophet wasn't anti-Jew. He wasn't anti-Semitic. He was someone who, if wrong, violence, injustice was done, this is why they were kicked out. Anyone, not just the Jews. Anyways, one thing is that the Jews, they continued in their instigating towards trouble. We discussed before Islam is that one of the things that the Jews used to do to the Arab is that they used to instigate, is that they used to make problems between each other so that the Arab can fight against each other, thus weakening them and giving the Jews the power. Now the Jews, they're seeing the Prophet and the Sahaba together, loving each other, agreeing. Everything is going good, regardless of their tribe, their lineage, their culture, their traditions. Everything that is in the past, we're not worried about that anymore. They only love each other and agree each other because of La ilaha illallah. And this, of course, burned the Jews. So they wanted to do away in order to rid of this. So what they started doing is that one of the Jewish men, he sent out the kids in order to what? Bring up some stories of the past, of which the kids were told to bring up the wars of Bu'ath. The Bu'ath is basically a civil war between the Arab that happened before Islam, or before the Prophet, I'm not going to say before Islam, before the Prophet came, and it was a civil war. Is that they were fighting, and they were, a violent battle, major battle that they fought. And in this battle, they wrote poems against each other, rude remarks against each other. This is in the past, of course, it's Jahiliyyah. However, the kids are bringing this up again, and they're saying, hey, weren't you fighting in the Bu'ath, or weren't your family fighting in the Bu'ath? Look, this person that you're sitting next to and you're hugging and you're kissing and you're going out with, he was a part of it, or his family was a part of it. They were fighting you, and look what they were saying about you. So they're bringing up these old stories. So soon the Muslims, they were tricked and they started talking about this. They started arguing about this. And soon it led to a point where they were about to fight each other because of this in the past. However, the Prophet was informed of this, and he immediately went out to address this topic. Now, even the matter of which the Prophet addressed this is an amazing way. And the Prophet didn't go there and say, start screaming and saying, you guys are Muslim, you guys are going back to the past. He came in a wise, gentle manner, and he told them a couple of words, 5 sentences, even if it was 5 sentences, probably 1 sentence, in order to calm them down and give them the reality. The Prophet says, "O you Muslims, have you entered the state of pre-Islamic ignorance while I am still amongst you, after Allah has guided you and honored you by Islam? By it He cut the shackles of ignorance from your necks and delivered you from disbelief and united your hearts." So short. Prophet is saying, "O Muslims, are you going back to the days of Jahiliyyah, the days of ignorance and arrogance? Are you going back to those days, even when I'm still amongst you, even after the victory of Badr and the victory we're having now and the things that we're doing? Now you're going back to the days of Jahiliyyah after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided you to Islam." And look how he describes Jahiliyyah, the state of ignorance and arrogance. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Islam, He broke the shackles that were around your neck from these traditions and these customs that you guys were following in the days of Jahiliyyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cut these shackles that were holding you by the neck, forcing you to do so. Are you now going to go back to that after all this happened and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided you and united you guys? And immediately after the speech of the Prophet, peace upon him, the Sahaba, they forgot everything that happened, and they began hugging themselves and embracing each other and loving each other once again. They went home happy with themselves and happy with the other Muslims and happy with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which even me and you can learn. Even if we have a small or big argument with anyone, move on. What's the big deal? Why are you grudging? These people were literally about to go to war. However, after being reminded and after being told about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet peace upon him and what Islam did to them, they forgot all of this and they began hugging each other. SubhanAllah, these are the people who we have to try to be like. Anyways, so after hearing this, the Muslims, of course, they changed and they realized this was a plot of the Jews. This is the first plot. Second plot is that the Jews, they began to publicly threaten Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. is that after the battle of Badr, the Prophet peace upon him went to the area of Banu Qaynuqa, because the Banu Qaynuqa was named after the area that they lived in Medina. So the Prophet peace upon him went there to one of the marketplaces, to one of the bazaars, and he is talking to the Jews, and he is reminding them of the treaty between them, because now the Jews are there doing some funny things. They're going against the treaty. So the Prophet peace upon him is reminding them of the treaty. And he's telling them, do not go against the treaty or try to cause violence or corruption, because verily, Battle of Badr was not too long ago. And you've seen what happened to Quraish, those who chose violence and corruption. So the Prophet is saying what? Oh Jews, let's stay on this contract, this treaty, because if you don't, then I'm going to have to respond. And if I respond, you've seen what happened to Quraish in the Battle of Badr. So this is when the Jews publicly threatened the Prophet, peace be upon him. They said, O Muhammad, do not deceive yourself. You merely fought a party of Quraysh who were inexperienced at war. But if you want to fight us, then know that we are an entire people, and indeed you have not met with anyone like us before. So what is the Jew saying? Saying, O Muhammad, do not deceive yourself. Do not trick yourself. Do not even think that you are someone after the victory at Badr. He said, you fought the weak Quraysh. They didn't know how to fight. They were inexperienced at war. There were only a couple of people. He said, verily, if you were to fight us, you're going to find us people who are experienced at war. We are one. We know how to fight. We stick together. We stand in rows. He's saying, basically, Ya Muhammad, don't think that you're something now that you beat Quraysh in the Battle of Badr. We are Banu Qaynuqa. We know how to fight. We know what we're doing. You never came across anyone like us before. So this is an open threat and an open challenge to the Prophet peace upon him in public. So the Prophet peace upon him, at this moment, he remains silent, and he allows time to play out, and the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to play out. That's the second. The third is that the Jews would mock, harass, and even humiliate the Muslims in public as well, which is something that clearly goes against the treaty. One clear example of this is the woman who went out to one of the marketplaces of Banu Qaynuqa, once again, is that she went to one of the goldsmiths, and she went either to buy or sell some gold. So when she is there, the Jewish men begin to try to flirt with her, to harass her, to expose some of her awra. Awra meaning the private part. The Prophet says that everything is awra except for the hands and the face of the woman. Anyways, so they try to expose her awra, her private part. And then she refuses, of course. Then she goes to sit down, and without her knowing, the Jewish men, they tie something on the hijab of this woman. And the reason of doing so is that when she gets up, is that this thing that they tied to her garment would rip off her hijab. And this is exactly what would happen. As soon as this woman would get up, the thing ripped off of her hijab, and her entire awra, her entire body became exposed. So she began screaming and rushing to cover herself. That's when one of the Muslim men who happened to be there seen this and immediately ran over there and killed the man who did this. He killed him right there on the spot. And then all of the Jews surrounded him, because we are in a marketplace of Banu Qaynuqa full of Jews. They surrounded this man and they killed this man. And this is where the treaty was no longer affected. This is where the treaty was cut. No more treaty between the Muslims and the Jews. So how did the Prophet respond after all of this that happened and many other things that we didn't describe? Is that on the 15th day of Shawwal, in the second year of the Hijrah, the Prophet, peace upon him, marched towards Banu Qaynuqa. And as the Prophet, peace upon him, is going there, remember the speech of Banu Qaynuqa. They said, if you were to fight us, we are going to defeat you. You guys are nothing. We guys are strong. However, as the Prophet, peace upon him, is marching towards them, what does Banu Qaynuqa do? They go and lock themselves inside their houses, inside their fortresses, like cowards. They hide inside their houses and their fortress. They didn't want to come out, even though they were talking crazy stuff before. The Prophet goes there, and they don't want to get out their houses. So the Prophet and the Sahaba, they surround their houses and their fortresses in the area of the Banu Qaynuqa for 15 days. Nothing going in and nothing going out. After 15 days, Banu Qaynuqa, they surrender. And the Prophet upon him is deciding on what to do with them. That's when we have the story of Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Sulul. I haven't mentioned his name before, and we're going to mention his names later on. Now, of the things that happened between Badr and Uhud is what? The acceptance of Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Sulul. He accepted Islam. Barely by just speech. He was not a true Muslim. He was the leader of the hypocrites. Someone who said that they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they didn't in their heart. What did he do? Is he came to the Prophet upon him in a disrespectful, rude way, as he did throughout his entire life. Is that he would say, "Oh Muhammad, Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says clearly in the Quran, do not call the Prophet as you call the others. Just call him Ya Rasulullah. Have respect in his name. Anyways, he comes and says, Ya Muhammad, these are my people, we are allies, we are, loved ones. This is, they helped me in the past, I help them. You have to release them, you have to let them go. So what is Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul saying? He says, I am an ally of the Jews. He kept saying this and saying this and saying this. And he said, I fear that if I don't help them, then bad luck will fall on me. This is what he kept saying. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the verses in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Now look at the beauty of understanding the context of revelation. Sabab al-Nuzul. Understanding why a verse was revealed. And these verses that I'm about to recite are famous verses that are quoted by many. But when we put them in the context that we're about to put them in, it makes so much more sense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, do not take the Christians or the Jews as allies. Talking directly to who? Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. And look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks the exact speech of Abdullah in the next verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so you see those whose hearts is in disease, hastening in association with them, saying, we are afraid a misfortune may strike us. SubhanAllah, exact phrase of Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. He said, I fear that if I don't help them, what? Bad luck will fall upon me. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying in the verse? He says, verily you see those who have a disease in their heart, that what they come to you and they say, if I don't help them, what? I fear that misfortune may strike me. Directly talking about Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. And the Prophet and the Sahaba knew who this verse was addressing to, because they were there, they were seeing this happening. So they knew that this verse was addressed to Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, and they also learned from confirmation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that he is a hypocrite. Is that they knew it. They helped, but the Prophet and the Sahaba, they never, at this time, they never expressed, they never said it, but they knew that in Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul's heart was this disease and hypocrisy. And this is exactly what happened. He kept saying, I am an ally, I'm an ally. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, do not take them as allies. If you take them as allies, you are one of them. And then as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finished off the verses, he says, O you who believe, whoever of you should revert from his religion, meaning whoever you should leave his religion of polytheism or whatever, and convert into Islam, he will put in place of them, meaning your old friends and your old allies, a people he will love and who will love him, and who are humble towards the believers, powerful against the disbelievers, and they strive in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and do not fear the blame of the critic. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finishes off these verses in saying, your ally is none but Allah, his messenger, and those who believe, who establish prayer and give zakah. Whoever is an ally of Allah and his messenger and those who believe, then indeed the party of Allah will be the winners. SubhanAllah, look how powerful these verses revealed and how they address the exact situation that the Prophet was in. Anyways, the Prophet would not kill Banu Qaynuqa. He would not go and destroy their houses and kill them and massacre them, and he gave them 3 days to pack their stuff and get out. This is what the Prophet said. This is what the Prophet did. Is that he gave Banu Qaynuqa 3 days to pack as much stuff as they could and leave out. And this is exactly what they did. Is that Banu Qaynuqa, they gathered as much things as they could, and they set out, not out of Medina, but out of Arabia entirely, and went towards the area of Syria. And they left. And this is the expulsion of Banu Qaynuqa. And this is just one of the 3 tribes in Medina, the Jewish tribes that were in Medina. We still have 2 others. Banu Nadir and Banu Qurayza, which their time is coming later on, as we're going to discuss. But the Prophet expels them for obvious reasons, as we now learn. For obvious reasons. Now, other major events that would happen is, in addition to the many people who tried to plot against the Muslims and the Prophet him, another person who would plot and plan against them is Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan is probably the highest chief in Mecca now, after the Battle of Badr. He's in charge of everything now. He would plot against the Prophet and the Muslims by sneak attacking them or raiding them and killing 2 Muslims. And when the Prophet is informed of this and he goes and to defend himself and defend the Muslims, Abu Sufyan cowardly runs away. In addition to the major events that we have between these 2 battles is a man named Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf is killed by the Muslims. Now Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf is one of the most evil of the Jews. What he used to do is that he was a poet. What he used to do is write strong, violent, abusive poems about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. ridiculing him and abusing him and harassing him and speaking in a very bad way against him. And in addition, writing poems honoring and elevating those who fight and plot against the Muslims and the Prophet peace be upon him. Is that this is a major thing, by the way, is that, say for example, I want to kill someone. I'm one person. If I go, I fail or succeed, I'm only one person. However, when you have a poet or a media outlet who is encouraging people to kill the Prophet peace upon him, and degrading and humiliating and ridiculing the Prophet peace upon him in the same poems as well, this is affecting many others. In addition, he would write poems and songs about Muslim women and how he was aiming to defame them and talk badly about them. So you see, this guy is having a very bad and legitimate effect on the Muslims and on the Prophet peace upon him. And in addition, and he did many other things, but as a result of these many things that he did and the clear evilness of him, the Muslims killed him. And this is one of the most Muslims killed him, and in detail, this is said to be one of the most controversial topics in Islam, when it's really not. You know, people bring this up in the Seerah and say this when it's, in fact, we were to look at reality and look at the sources, we understand that this is not something that is extraordinary. This is something that was supposed to be done, saying the things that he said and doing the things that he did. Anyways, in detail of how the Prophet peace upon him, told the Muslims to kill him, this is beyond the scope of this class, but inshallah we may talk about this after the Seerah series. In addition, we have a good story, is that the Muslims, they captured one of the abandoned caravans of the Quraish. And through this caravan, you had the Muslims now capture a caravan that was worth 100,000 dirhams, which is an amazing amount, is a legitimate amount, it's something that can help the Muslims a lot. How did the Prophet peace upon him and the Muslims find this abandoned caravan? Is that, as we discussed, even one of the reasons why Quraish and the Jews didn't want the Muslims in Medina is that now they controlled all the trade routes in and out of Mecca. Is that the Quraysh, the only thing that they relied upon was رحلة الشتاء والصيف, the trades of the winter and the summer. But now every time they tried to do trade, the Muslims would block them. So they tried to find an alternative new route. But the Prophet peace upon him found out about this and went to go stop them. When they seen the Prophet peace upon him, they stopped, they abandoned their caravan, and they went back home. And then this is when the Prophet peace upon him, with this caravan and any other booty of war which they have collected, he divided it amongst the Muslims evenly, after taking a khums, a fifth of it, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger and the religion of Islam. And this is of the major things that we see that happened between the battle of Badr and the battle of Uhud. And as a result of this many failures of the Quraysh and the rapid, unbelievable domination of the Muslims in this short amount of time, this would leave the Quraysh with no other choice than to gather everything that they have and fight against the Muslims in even a bigger battle, a more powerful battle than that of Badr. And this battle is none other than the battle of Uhud, which we will discuss in detail next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you guys for watching once again. Make sure you and everyone that you know that can benefit and enjoy and be interested in this series, the Seerah series, watch this episode and every other episode, because now we are getting to the point where so many events and so many famous things are happening that we have to, as Muslims, know and be able to understand and able to teach our children and our friends and our family and even ourselves. So let's buckle down and get ready for these big topics. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you guys next week.